Hope you're having a good day. We're going to be looking in Romans chapter 1 and 2 today. Our hymn is called Just One Way to the Gate. Okay. There's just one way to the gate. We're in Romans chapter 2, but let's back up and see Romans chapter 1. If you're not familiar with the book of Romans, the first few chapters go like this. In Romans chapter 1, in speaking about the gospel, verse 16, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first, and also for the Greek. So the Jews and the Gentiles. And so it goes on in chapter 1 talking about things that the Gentiles had done, turning to idolatry and things like that, turning away from God. They didn't like to retain God in their knowledge. Speaks about all of those things, but so it's what it's speaking about is how the Gentiles need Jesus. And then in chapter 2 it talks about the Jews and how the Jews needed Jesus. And so it goes through and it talks about how they would judge the Gentiles, but that they were, frankly, they were doing a lot of the same things, verse 3. And so they needed to be reminded that they needed the Messiah. Verse 6 talks about judgment of God and how the Lord will render to each one according to his deeds eternal life to those who by patient continuance in doing good seek for glory, honor, and immortality. And what I'm kind of keying in on today, there's a verse in chapter 2, and it's verse 14, after that one in pink. It talks about, for when Gentiles who do not have the law, by nature do the things in the law, these, although not having the law, are a law to themselves. It's an odd verse, and sometimes people try to turn that verse into perhaps something it doesn't mean. And they think, well, so Gentiles who don't have the law, but they're still going to be acceptable to the Lord. They were going to be acceptable to the Lord without Judaism. And it's, well, if they can be acceptable to the Lord without Judaism, well, then maybe people can be acceptable to the Lord without Christianity. And it's a dangerous road to go down. And what I wanted you to see from the passage, back to our account. So he's talking about what the Lord will do. The Lord will render to each one according to his deeds. Eternal life to those who by patient continuance in doing good seek for glory, honor, and immortality. I wanted you to pay attention to this business about according to their deeds. And so you have those who continue to do good, seeking for eternal life, but then you have those who are self-seeking and who do not obey the truth. Okay, so you have this first picture of patiently continuing to do good. You might notice, verse 10, glory, honor, and peace to everyone who works what is good, to the Jew first and also to the Greek, for there is no partiality with God. See, sometimes people get caught up in Romans and they think that Romans isn't about obedience. You just pay attention to what's being said and you can tell we're talking about obedience. So now, verse 12, for as many as have sinned without law will also perish without law, and as many as have sinned in the law will be judged by the law. Again, that's a description of Gentile and Jew. As many as have sinned without the law will perish without the law. What that's saying is, Gentiles, that God will still judge them. He renders to each one according to their deeds. For not the hearers of the law are just in the sight of God, but the doers of the law will be justified. See, the Jews heard the word. Here's the issue. The Jews heard the word, and the Gentiles did not hear the word, per se. The law specifically, the old law. But it's not the hearers of the law are just in the sight of God. The Jews heard it, but the question is, are they doing it? So the Jews heard it, but many of them weren't doing it. But then the Gentiles, well, they didn't hear it per se, but many of them did it. That's verse 14 again. In that sense. We'll also add this concerning the Gentiles. Romans 1 makes the point that they are without excuse. The invisible attributes of God are clearly seen, being understood by those things. You have that passage. And so they heard something because they are doing what the Lord wanted them to do, I think you would have to say. And so our passage, it's not the hearers of the law, but the doers of the law who will be justified. And then you have verse 14. Again, I won't read it again. But now notice verse 16. In the day when God will judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ according to my gospel. And to just make the point, whether Jew or Gentile, whether Old or New Testament, there is still only one way, and it's through Jesus. There's only one mediator. It's through Jesus. Our passage, in the day when God will judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ according to my gospel. And so you turn to the Lord. You walk by faith is what you do. And there are Gentiles who did that, and there were Jews who did that. There were Gentiles who did not do that, and there were Jews who did not do that. Now, of course, we know where Romans is going into chapter 3, and thinking about obedience, the question is, well, what happens when you sin? Because all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And that's why you need Jesus, whether Jew or Gentile. You need Jesus. You need the Messiah. There's only one way, and it's Jesus. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.